Welcome to Leading by Example, Sparking Innovation Through Human-Centered Leadership, a think tank media podcast. Hosted by Andrew Whitson, leadership strategist, educator, and founder of Person First Consulting. This show explores how trust, empathy, and inclusive leadership shape stronger teams, smarter innovation, and healthier workplace cultures. Because when you lead people first, results will follow. Let's get started.
Hello, and welcome to Leading by Example, Sparking Innovation Through Human-Centered Leadership. My name is Andrew Whitson, and I'm the CEO and founder of Person First Consulting. And I've been a part of hospitality internships for just about a year and a half, almost 2 years, which is crazy to think about. It's been an awesome ride. And the reason why I'm here today and why I started my business is my overarching vision and mission in life has been to help people, in their careers and in their education by helping them get from where they are now to where they want to be next. And then I also really find a lot of validation in seeing the success of my clients, and that fuels my passion and dedication for service, inclusion, and success. So it's one of the reasons why I'm here today is to help leaders like yourself, whether you're an aspiring leader, current leader, or a leader of a large organization, just helping you, to hone your craft and be even better than you already are. So today, as we mentioned, I'm diving into sparking innovation through human-centered leadership. So if you've ever wondered how to create culture of trust, foster inclusive decision-making, or lead with empathy while also driving results, this is definitely something that can help you with modern leadership. And so we're going to be talking, candidly about different things that might work, maybe things that have worked for other companies or haven't, and then also talk about some strategies and stories from different leaders that are shaping the workspace through a human-centered lens. And so each episode will talk about something a little bit different and ways to give you tools as a leader to be even more successful. And so today's episode, we're going to focus on the definition of human-centered leadership and leading by example, and also provide some examples of how those things can spark innovation within your team. All right, so what is human-centered leadership? It's helpful that it's right in the name. So it is the leadership mentality where we are thinking about humans first. And so this can be customers. So you might be customer centric, or it might be your employees, or it might be a combination of the two. But this leadership mentality is really thinking about the people, the stakeholders that your business serves. And then byproduct of thinking of them, you're also having success in your business. So the counterpoint to this would be if you're thinking about businesses that are only thinking of numbers or metrics first, that would be the opposite of human-centered leadership. Now, something that I hear a lot with human-centered leadership is, oh, well, if you're only focused on people, then you're not focused on numbers. And that is kind of a misconception. We're still thinking about numbers. Every business owner has to think about their bottom line and has to think about the money that's going into their organization. But when you're thinking from a human-centered lens, you're thinking about your customers, you're thinking about your employees and how their experience can lead to results. So hopefully that makes sense in that distinction. And then the other side of this is thinking about leading by example. So again, it's right in the name there. When we think about leaders that lead by example, it's instead of operating under a do this approach, it's follow this, right? Like this is what I'm doing, and I want you to do the same thing or similar things in your work. And then, so thinking about, why am I here? Why is this important? Why should I listen to Andrew? If you think about our modern workplace right now, there's a lot of change going on. I feel like every day I see something new that's going on in the workplace and different things that are impacting our daily lives. And so this topic is directly funneled into things like innovation, which help make our work landscape even better. And there's a lot of pressure right now in getting a job, keeping a job, and also keeping your business afloat. There's a lot of pressure from customers as well as from government and from every which direction, right? And so I think it's really important to be thinking about how your business is operating and how you're being as a leader, especially with this time of global uncertainty and things that are going on that impact us with or without us wanting them to. And so thinking about, like what will we leave today with? Hopefully you get a greater understanding of what human-centered leadership is, how to lead by example, and then some stories and anecdotes about how that works. So I want to start off with a personal anecdote here about human-centered leadership. Hopefully other people that are listening have been to a Total Wine. And so I recently went in there and have been a Total Wine customer for a long time. And every time I go into one of their stores, right from the get-go, I am greeted by someone, and walked through, my experience from beginning to end with a mentality of I'm first, and it's always been a really pleasant experience. And I tend to buy more because I'm having a good time. I usually go to Total Wine with an idea of what I'm going to get, but then, I might be greeted by someone offered a sample or something, a little insider tip. They will let you try a lot of their wines or alcohols, even if it's not something that they have like a sample right there readily available. So it's something I never realized until they offered it. But when you have the ability to sample something and try it and see if you like it, you're more likely to buy it, right? And just thinking about that experience of that from the minute I walked in, I was valued and I was cared about and walked through my experience with care. So just an example of that human-centered leadership. I'm not sure if it's that way at every store, but every Total Wine that I've been to, I've always felt that way. So just a little anecdote there. And then tying it into, like, why is this important? So what we found in human-centered leadership is that organizations tend to be about 16% more productive, 21% more profitable, and they also have 41% lower absenteeism. And that means just people, calling out sick or not showing up to work. And this result is even higher for teams that are diverse and have inclusive teams. So it tends to generate about a 19% more in revenue due to innovation for diverse teams as well. So you might be thinking like, well, if that's the case, like, why doesn't everybody do this? And we'll talk about that in the next episode. But if you just think about it, right, like there's fear of change, and there's lots of things that might hold a leader back from trying some of these things, especially when they're being held to certain outcomes and deliverables. So let's dive into what is human-centered leadership a little bit more. So we've talked about it, being focused on the customers or your employees, stakeholders. But what does a human-centered leader look like? So a lot of times they'll display things like empathy or care for their employees or for their customers. They might have high emotional intelligence, so they can tell what's going on with their employees or with their customers and just kind of have that intuition. They tend to be authentic, inclusive, and adaptable. And this leads to a lot of things that fuel innovation. And so we've already talked about how this is different from traditional leadership, where they might be, I'm in control, this is what you need to do, very hierarchy focused or metrics focused. And another thing to mention here with human-centered leadership is the idea of psychological safety. And what that means is just feeling like you are safe in your work, where you can take risks. And this is a group mentality amongst an organization or a team, where you feel like it's okay to try something new, maybe fail, and try to find different ways of doing things. And so when we think about human-centered leadership and what that results in, you'll tend to see increased employee satisfaction. So people are happy at work, feel like they're doing a good job. They have stronger motivation to do well at work. They're committed to their work. And then, as we mentioned before, it leads to little pockets of innovation when we see human-centered leadership. And in general, people feel more trust of their supervisors and are willing to share more of their ideas when they feel like they are safe and that they are taken care of at work. A lot of this may sound obvious. I feel like when I was in undergrad and learning about a lot of this, I was like, this just all makes sense. But then I feel like once you get into the workforce, some places have this figured out and other places don't. And that's okay. But there are ways to address that, whether you're an employee, you're a leader or you're, a CEO. There are ways for you to address this at every level. And so thinking about that, an example here of a human-centered leader, the CEO and president of Hyatt, so I'm probably going to say the name wrong, but Mark Hoplamazian, he has worked to shape Hyatt into a well-known brand for experiential hospitality. And so thinking about just not the luxury and the resort appeal, but also making sure to think about employee well-being as well as guest loyalty. So again, that human-centered component and having meaningful experiences, whether you're at work or whether you're at one of their hotels. And so that focus that he has on wellness and inclusion and making sure that brand experience aligns with what employees are doing as well as what the customers are experiencing. So hopefully, if you've ever been to a Hyatt, hopefully you felt that. And if not, then maybe there's something there to think about. Cool. So now I'm going to move into our next topic here. So about how leading by example can spark innovation. So when we've got human-centered leadership that then allows for leading by example and how that can work to create those hubs of innovation. So the real thing here when we're talking about leading by example, again, it's not that do this, it's here's what I'm doing and I'd like you to follow suit. So it's not just words and saying things, but it's the actions of the leader and allowing for space for their employees to follow as well. And so what this looks like is showing vulnerability. So I think something that is really helpful in an organization is creating space to make mistakes. And there's no better way to show that as a leader than showing that you're capable of making mistakes. They're humans as well, right? We are human as leaders. And making mistakes is okay at work. And it actually is a product of learning. I reflect back on one of my first jobs and I made every mistake imaginable. But because of that, I was able to write a playbook of how to best do that job because I had literally made every mistake you could think of. And so ideally, you don't want to be making every mistake in a job, but learning from those mistakes is how we grow. And I think when a leader can showcase that to their employees, it kind of lets you breathe a little bit, right? And feel like you're okay and your leader is a human as well, and that they're there for you, whether you make a mistake or not. And then, admitting that you've made a mistake, right? Not covering it up or trying to, say that, you're perfect because we're not. And then also, taking risks, and just saying, hey, I tried this, it didn't work out, but here's what we learned and what we can go from here. And then another thing with leading by example is making sure to foster inclusion and diversity. If you think about a team, if you have a team full of people that all have the same kind of idea and they all agree with each other all the time, is that going to be, might be very, very productive, but is it going to be innovative? And I would argue probably not. So I think when you have a team where everyone's bringing a new idea or a new way of doing things, you've got a lot of excitement and activity on that team. And now it could go the opposite direction where you've got so much innovation and no productivity. So you have to find that balance. But if you've got a team full of people with those unique ideas and you have the freedom to explore and do those things, you're probably going to have a really cool product that relates to a lot of your customers as well. And speaking of that, feedback is a really important part of leading by example. And so when you as a leader model how to receive feedback as well as give it, I think a lot of times we think about our leaders providing feedback on a quarterly basis for performance reviews, but that feedback can come other ways as well. Through the product of leading by example, you can show that this is how I will receive feedback from you as an employee and what I will do from there. So all of this really just kind of helps to funnel into an innovative workspace and a culture of innovation and inclusion. So I want to provide some examples here to help frame this a little bit more. So the Royal Savoy Hotel, there was a general manager that created quality teams. And so these teams were volunteers from across the organization. They were staff from different departments, and they were brought together to make process improvements in a variety of areas. And so one thing that came out of that was they had this first and last 15-minute initiative that came for their customers. So thinking about guest interactions, that first 15 minutes and that last 15 minutes, so thinking about room readiness, events, things like that, that came from this quality team exercise. And so this is just a really good example of leading by example. So the general manager created, this space. There were no managers in the room. It was all just employees brainstorming and coming together with ideas. And so not a lot of times, or not a lot of leaders will take the opportunity to create that space, out of a fear of productivity or I can't take them away from their day-to-day tasks. But if you don't do that, then there's maybe not the opportunity for these ideas and these new processes. And so it goes beyond just to saying, oh yeah, well, we value new ideas to, well, this is what we did to bring those new ideas out and foster them. And that build up, psychological safety, increased motivation, and brought up those good ideas that may not have come otherwise. And then another example of this working out well is the Ritz-Carlton Four Seasons. So if you ever stayed at one of their properties, they've got a really long-standing reputation for being, really well known and doing a great job of empowering their staff to do what's right for the guests, kind of going above and beyond that experience. And the reason that this happens is, they've given them the ability to do that. They've empowered their employees to go beyond the call of duty and provide a best-in-class customer service. And so the way that they've done this is by treating employees well, encouraging and rewarding, going above and beyond. So they've got what's called the gold standard at Ritz-Carlton. And so they're empowered to spend money to actually solve customer problems. So a pretty unique approach of going way above and beyond what most people typically expect of their stay. And so this is a classic example of human-centered leadership where, we are trusting our frontline employees to, utilize discretion and actually utilize funding to make the customer experience better. Treating them with respect, giving them autonomy, allowing for that customer to have an amazing experience kind of, within boundaries, but giving them extra space. A lot of times a frontline employee at another establishment may not have that kind of bandwidth, right? To do that, they might have to go to a manager or to a director or a regional manager, follow all this hierarchy and process. But at this organization, they've allowed for their folks to do that and provide a really great personalized experience. And then again, it allows for a culture of innovation and doing something different and seeing how it goes. And then I'm going to provide a couple of examples of maybe how it didn't work out as well. So I have never been to this restaurant, but there's a restaurant in Boston called Spice Kitchen that they wanted to explore innovation in a different direction and bring in robots to cook the meals and offer fast casual, really fast. And there were some really good things that happened there, right? They were able to make a lot of food really quickly, but they maybe missed some of that customer first focus. And there came up some issues with quality control and cleanliness when they removed the human factor from that equation. And so things suffered a little bit by having too much automation, which I think is a really unique thing with everything going on right now in our world, where I think we think about how can we make it faster? How can we make it more automated? But if we go too far and we remove some of that human factor, we may have removed some of that customer first or that employee first mentality that can also lead to increase in productivity, increase in performance. So just something to think about. And so they ended up pulling back some of those robots, injecting more employees back into their model so that there was a little bit more, monitoring of customer feedback and on quality. And then another kind of more broad perspective, we talked about that difference between, if a frontline employee has the autonomy to do decisions versus a traditional model where there might be a lot of hierarchy. So if you think about some luxury hotel chains, they may have a lot of hierarchy in place, more autocratic leadership styles where, you follow this process of reporting. And so in that model, your people that are on the front line tend to have less of a voice, right? Because they have to talk to their manager and their manager has to talk to their manager and so on and so forth. And so that means feedback is often not heard well, right? If you've ever played a game of telephone, right? If you've talked to one person and they talk to 5 other people, that message gets watered down and not as clear. And then any decision making from that is really slow, and there's lots of process. So just a counterpoint to when innovation doesn't work, or environments where it might not be as encouraged as it could be. So there might be ideas that are flowing in that environment. You've got people that want to express what's going on and what they think could go better, but just getting a lot of stagnation and coming up with a lot of walls. So that has been our podcast here today about human-centered leadership and leading by example. And so what we've covered today is just a couple of examples of how human-centered leadership can impact innovation, as well as that leading by example, how that can foster a culture of innovation and creativity. And in the next episode, we're going to focus a little bit more on some practical skills, behaviors, and strategies, as well as, we talked a little bit about the challenges that can come up with this model and pushback that might be received from leadership, or that fear of change, and how we can combat that and come up with different phrases and strategies for overcoming those obstacles. So I look forward to seeing you then.
Thank you for spending time with us on Leading by Example, sparking innovation through human-centered leadership. You can watch every episode of the podcast inside Hospitality Nexus, a global human-first platform bringing the hospitality ecosystem together in one place. Inside the Nexus, it's a career fair that never closes, connecting industry leaders, educators, students, employers, and partners through real presence. Explore more at hospitalitynexus.org. Until next time, lead people first. Results follow.